we 3, 2, 1 it. I don't know. I'm having fun with different fingers now that I'm on camera and can see myself doing this. My bad. All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Will and Jerod Make a Game, right? That was loosely what we were calling this?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Through a couple different scenarios we haven't recorded in at least a month now, I think. So my memory on some of that is a little fuzzy, including whether Jerod or I was supposed to be doing the intro this episode. We were trying to alternate evenly. Who knows? But I'm going to start off this week. So I'm Will. You may know me from Gamenomicon and associated games like Party First and Warmer in the Winter. And I'm working with Jerod here, and we are documenting our process as we work on a new game. Jerod, what would folks know you from?
Well, they would know me from my one well, I shouldn't say only, but my biggest game so far is one that you helped get published for Goblin Market. And I have to say, I finally got to run it for conventions in the last couple weeks. That's why I've been very busy trying to do that. And it ended up being an awesome experience. And the feedback that we got from it was fantastic. Um, I don't know everything on the other side, whether it translated into direct sales or not, like a whole bunch. I know there was a little bit, uh, but it definitely gave me a lot of, I don't know, confidence, support, I guess, that I'm not terrible at this. Whether it was running the game or whether it was the game itself, I can't tell, but everyone had a great time. That was the most important part.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And just so folks know, I mean, that was an in-person con, right? Like you were out there gaming for what sounds like a very long time period.
Yeah, I put in one day, I put in 10 hours worth of running games or so. But like did 2 sessions of Goblin Market and I got in one of Party First. That's what we ended on. And I could not have been happier with the way Party First went too. It was a ton of fun. We just did the first adventure Dead Drop. It's in the back of the Twilight War book, and it worked like a charm. And I'm starting to lean into this new thing called spaghetti. I'm naming it spaghetti designing.
Okay.
Running games as well. Is that what I found out? Is that people like chaos. And every time things started, every time people got a little bit too ahead of themselves, I just let it go until we got to the point where they were fighting off some ghouls, they were being discovered by the underground mafia, and they had just, unbeknownst to them, ran into the big bad, the kind of psychic person, and it happened all at once and it was awesome. So you just kind of throw it all out there and see what they go with and see what sticks, and that's what you play with. And it's a lot of fun.
Nice. I like it. I'm glad it went well.
Yeah, it really did.
Well, speaking of, keep going. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and by doing that, I also did a little bit of a play test for um, Unity, is what we're still calling it, but we've got another episode I think later on that we're going to talk about that. Um, did some play testing with Unity, and I am re-energized and I'm excited to get back into writing and designing this game.
Awesome. Well, Jerod is already, I think, moving in the direction we were going to say, because I was about to say, we're trying something new here for the show. Jerod and I can both be rather loquacious, shall we say. And we've inadvertently set an ambitious goal to record 3 episodes tonight on different topics. So let's get rolling on topic number 1. And I'm sure some of these may bleed a little bit, but let's attempt to sort of focus. And listeners, bear with us that some of this may have some connected thoughts or implications that we may try to shove over into the next episode or something. So I know one thing that Jerod brought up recently because um, long story short, I'm feeling much better mentally lately, and I've been diving back in, commenting and editing docs and things like that, and started plastering Jerod with questions over the last couple weeks, and he basically said, "Wait a minute, I've got something big with skills I'm thinking about. Maybe we should talk about it on air." And that's pretty much like almost all he's said about it. So lay it on me.
All right. There are two big theories that I came away from doing the little bit of play testing that we did. So the first one is this. We know that we wanted to use something called the a force-like abilities in this game, right? And I ran into two possible solutions to really make this work. The first one is right now we've got vigor for physical, intellect for mental equity, presence for your personality, your charisma, and then right now we got mysticism, right? um, there is an idea that we take every skill that we have listed for mysticism right now and just get rid of it. So this is the big idea that I had. I don't know if I'm sold on it yet, but I at least want to present it. You take away all the skills out of mysticism. You make it pretty bland, unfortunately, after that. And then you just turn those into abilities that only people that are certain professions have access to. Okay. That's one way to
Okay.
go with it. And you make those things big. Like you like see the future. And I figured out a really cool mechanic is that it's you're just retrofitting everything that just happened by seeing the future. So for example, you go into a room, you do this, and something bad happens. You can say, nope, my character actually saw the future. That's what I saw in my dream. So here's what's actually going to happen. So you do everything the same up until a moment where, like, okay, I tell this person, don't do that. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That's totally cool. It's a one shot ability. It's super powerful. All right, so that's one possibility is that we do that. Now, the other one that I'm more leaning towards is that the skills that we've got with mysticism is that right now the way that we're kind of tinkering with them, they're very bland. We're ending up with more like a little bit of telekinesis, a little bit of mind bullets sort of stuff, a little like resistance to it, which is fine. But a lot of other games do that already, and I don't know if that's what we want. So I went back and looked at skills, and here's my presentation. Here's my idea. Is that under each attribute, so the four attributes, we want to have one. This is your general throwback skill. So like athletics for vigor. Like I don't know. I know that it has something to do with physicality, so it's going to be an athletics check, right? Okay, not a problem. So just generic for all that. So then it's like knowledge for intellect, empathy. What I would like that phrase for presence. Then for mysticism, it would be something like sensitivity, where you can like detect the essence, or um, like composure, so you can resist attacks, sort of thing. Maybe can lean towards that, right? So that's one line of skills, and then I want here's a specific skill that is this is the thing that you'll do most of the time with that attribute. So like for vigor, like fighting, for intellect, investigation. Like these are your gamer type things you'll be doing with it. Negotiations, like for your presence. And then finally, well, not finally, but the next one over that I'm really focusing on for the skills is world defining skills. Is that this is a skill that in no other setting would it be as important as it is in this world, in this setting. So, like for vigor, I've got it narrowed down to it's either like dueling, so I know we really want to play around with dueling rules, or piloting, meaning that look, we know we're in space, we're going to be doing space stuff. We want that to be an important skill. It's defining for this area. For intellect, I can't remember what I pulled out. Let me take a look what I was working on. Oh, was possibly like some sort of rigging or lore. where you're looking up the history of the world and it's important, or the rigging, which is where you're kind of hacking, you're doing stuff with the technology. That's the least exciting of them so far. For the presence, I know we wanted to use taunt, which is an attack on the honor of another person. That's going to be totally different than any other world that we've got so far, or settings I've ever been in. So I'm really happy with that one. And then finally, for mysticism, what is that world defining thing, skill, that's going to be used repeatedly? And what I had previously is that I had been putting the kind of net running thing under intellect. And what I did is that I moved that over to mysticism. And so now it's more of a weird, you're going into the machine to commune with the oracles, with the wild AI, going into this weird kind of spiritual space that's inside machines to find information where you can talk to these either friendly or wild oracles that are in there, is my idea. And so then I'm like, well, why don't we just keep getting bigger? Like, what are the things that you can do for a skill in mysticism that's something that's going to be cool, in also defining of the difference from it from other games? So the other skills I came up with were sensitivity, with miracle, where you could change um, the what do you call them, our status tags, basically. Um, commune, and what was the other one? Oh, harvesting, where you could gather it to yourself and then give your other people bonuses to their next checks. That's the most generic one, and it can be used. Other systems have kind of gotten something like that already. Um, but that was the whole idea. I've got other ones I want to think of, like I kind of liked alertness was good, but instead you call it prescience. And so you actively work on like seeing the future. You can use it for your initiative sort of thing. You can also have those abilities that were the retrocon what just happened, and stuff like that. So that's my idea. And I need to figure out for these skills, like how big do you want to go with these? And I think it's important we have one or two that are just like, oh, the reason that we have the skill in this setting is because it's defining of the setting. And that's the theories I'm working on. And it's a lot to throw at you. What do you think?
I've got several thoughts.
Yeah.
The first one I'm going to start with, and I'm going to own up to being willing to like kill a personal darling of mine, which is the idea of mysticism as a stat and associated skills, because I think by and large the type of stuff that you're talking about and that you have written out in the document, which I'm pointing to because I have it open beside this window on the screen, aren't skills anymore, realistically speaking, right? Like unless we're like more even than you were talking about, radically changing skills, that right, the attributes are kind of the inherent capabilities of your character. Skills are more like kind of technical proficiencies, trainings, activities they may engage in. And the two together in the base rules are the base rules. I mean, for the SRD, the tension engine, if for folks following along, it like the mechanical function of those two things are to build dice pools and to allow players to create interesting problem solving kind of issues by attempting to argue a variety of pairings to the GM, right? Looking at the list we've got here, say you're trying to find clues at some high society party, perhaps you can argue to the GM, you know what, I'm looking for clues. for my character's approach. They're going to be observing every tiny little detail, like Sherlock Holmes, looking at the dirt on people's pant legs and whatever. That should be intellect plus investigate, and the GM hopefully says, yeah, that sounds totally reasonable. Let's run with it. But maybe another character says, hey, we're at a party with a million people here. Like, I'm gonna work the crowd. So you know what? Like, my character, we're looking specifically for certain clues. So I think it should still be intellect. But I'm going to be outworking the crowd, so it should probably be paired with flattery in this case. And then, does the GM go along with, that makes sense in this scenario, and that type of thing. The point of bringing that up is that essentially that's in the base game system. That's the mechanical purpose and kind of end of those stats. What it sounds like you're looking at doing are adding, let's say, further kind of mechanical impact abilities, like, say, Miracle, being able to change status effects or the like, that are, in my mind, those are abilities that characters would have. That's not a skill. That's like a specific thing that they're doing, that they're like activating. And I feel like that also gets kind of weirdly muddled, where if you only have like 4 of these, or maybe 5 if you add dual, this may be a discussion that also applies to dual, that if there's a handful of skills that have extra rules associated with them, but then the others are just pool building, then it starts feeling disconnected and kind of jumbled to me. So I think the cleaner, faster, easier way, if you really want these kind of special effects, is to scratch mysticism as an attribute, as much as I hate to lose it, because I'm pretty sure I argued for it initially, and turn that into abilities of some kind, or to go all the way to the other end of the scale and have special rules for literally all of them, and special abilities and effects, which I think if you're used to the type of comments and questions that I throw in the document, I'm not so much in favor of that one, because I feel like that's getting too crunchy for this type of game. So
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to say yes. I agree with that last part for sure. You don't want extra rules for every skill that you throw out there. 100% get it. Now, I also don't want to get rid of mysticism either. It is, there's a lot of interesting things you can do with it, but I think we have to ask ourselves, for this setting, what is it that we want the mysticism to do, right? What are these abilities? What are these general things skill wise that we want them to do? Now, I think we've got plenty of like kind of generic ones, right? Like, if we win, and I know that you had written something that I was already leaning towards that direction, or where maybe it was already started. So it was
maybe,
like composure, sensitivity, and then like alertness. But we
oh
changed
yeah,
it.
yeah. I just tried to mix and match and kind of integrate a couple of the different like sets that you were looking at. Now I see what you're looking at.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was leaving the door open to take a look at. I just wanted to present the big stuff first. Like, take a look at what we can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still think like Miracle could work just fine. You would just have to know what the status effects are. But I also like the idea of like doing like quote unquote
I mean,
minor miracles, right? Like, I'm going to create light. Oh, well, okay, we can try it. Sure, why not?
okay. Well, do we look at because I just want to make sure you're not drifting back into there'd still be one or two skills that did something that like mechanically that no other skills do. Is it worth still looking at mysticism as an attribute and still 4 skills of some kind with general application, in the vein of things like athletics or technology or flattery, looking at the list here, that can be applied to different situations, and then also creating something else, something different, like if gosh, I'm trying to think of what to call it off the top of my head. Essentially a magic system, which is what I went to first whenever you said, create light or whatever, and created a separate, gosh, maybe that should still just be an ability, or a subset of abilities, maybe.
I do not want to add a magic system because one of the things that I've always disliked about the Star Wars universe and playing in it, which I've only done a very little bit, but I remember when Star Wars West End game first came out, it was like you could be a tank with unbeatable armor. Literally, you could be a thrown in the sun, but that was just the rules themselves being that great starting off. Or you could be a Jedi, and if you're a Jedi, you just beat everything. And I don't want that. I don't want people who can use the essence with great abilities. I don't want them to dominate the game, right?
Yeah.
But I do want them to excel within their niche. Like, because one thing that I liked about like the duel thing, that's just fighting. We know that that's just fighting, right? But
Yeah.
you call it duel, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. It's specifically for dueling. Like this, two people getting together and dueling. This is how arguments are sometimes won, how law cases are argued at times. It's a special thing within this world, right? But we also know you're just using it to fight, plants that are coming at you too. You know, if we can get something like that for each ability, I think, well, sorry, a skill like that in each attribute. That's what
Okay.
I'm going for.
That did remind me of a couple other thoughts I had from what you were saying earlier. Just to help clarify where you're kind of thinking here, because I'm used to thinking of, like I described, the arguing a pairing that may be unique to your character and your situation for any particular check, that doesn't have it built in for story reasons. But I know in document and in your talking, you're much more categorized on the skills, right? Are you envisioning them as being more locked in? Like, hey, if you're using vigor for this particular thing for your attribute, it's got to be one of the skills that matches it, or are you good with the freeform kind of argue the pairing?
Yeah, I'm 100% for the freeform because then
Okay.
it's also the job of the GM or the adventurer to present weird ideas. Like I want to do a mysticism dual check, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Okay.
something pretty
I
simple that we can do, you know? Um,
I like that. I think it really encourages creativity on the player's part.
yep. And it also takes care of a lot of these different problems too.
Yeah.
Like which then we'll have to come back and maybe take a look at taunt. Like, well, isn't that just presence dueling, really? You
I
know?
mean, yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of is. Yeah.
So then we have to
But
figure
I'm
out
sort of
how.
okay with that. I think, at least off the top of my head. Just because the flavor is so good at having that separate, you know.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
and honestly, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, and in the right scenario, I could see myself arguing it back the other direction and making it a vigor taunt if I'm like coming up and like slapping somebody with my glove or something. I don't know.
Well, and
Like,
that's the thing.
and
Maybe
I
that's
feel
how
like that
you,
would be different from a duel, like a vigor duel.
and so I think that's how you differentiate it. Dueling is for health damage. Taunt is honor damage. If you just make that distinction right there, but now they're two completely different skills.
Yeah, yeah.
So then that doesn't solve our mysticism problem, though. I want to keep
No.
mysticism. It's a cool ability, or I think with this world, if we are going to have something like the Force, I think we have to have mysticism. So then what I would say is that as a general catch-all, you notice that in all the catch-all of the attributes, the first one, the general that I have, usually that I have in my head, they're also the counters to the attack that's within that same attribute. So,
Okay.
like, athletics would be the dodge to getting shot, you know. Um, Empathy for trying to get run down by someone. Knowledge is that's just kind of a general catch-all, I guess. So I like composure as like the general defense for mysticism.
Yeah.
So if we keep
Yeah,
that,
I mean that sounds like a good defensive name.
and then sensitivity, that's just a good all around. That's just detecting and identifying, right?
Yeah.
Detecting
It's
and
mysticism investigate in a lot of ways.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Now that leaves us with two more though.
Hmm.
Um, and if we're staying away from
Well,
narrowly defining them, what are we gonna say?
I'm. Oh, I was going to say. I mean, you were talking before about having mysticism having the kind of connected skill that represents kind of the, I forget what you call it, but the net runner type
Oh,
of thing. I like commune. Maybe even if we, I I don't know off the top of my head while we're recording here, but if we soften the language a little bit so that it could be applied either way to like literally like going into the lace and talking to machines or kind of more you know well mystic wibbly wobbly like
yeah,
with the spirits like that's less overtly technological if there's a way to
yeah,
phrase it where it works both directions. I
yeah.
think that the word commune can totally work. It's
Okay.
just how do we write the sentence to go with it.
Right. Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I really am. The whole reason like started with like the AI stuff in the computer is like that's just how like it started at, right? For my ideas
Yeah,
of
yeah,
what we
yeah.
want to do with the world. Yeah, and I'm fine with trying to go to a different power because like this will help out in different episodes that we talk about here.
Right, right.
All right, so then
Well, and
finally,
and I just didn't want to accidentally skip if we had two gaps there that needed filled. I didn't want to skip that netrunner type of thing that you were talking about earlier.
okay. Yeah, nope, not at all. I think I definitely want to keep it in there too. All right, so then we still have got then one left, which the more the generic one is kind of the alertness, which is something that's different about this system rather than party first or anything else in the SRD, is that we are working with an initiative. I know that
Hmm.
you are worried about having something that's going to be used repeatedly lean so heavily on in a skill, and I personally think that's actually totally fine because it's going to
Well,
come up. Yeah, go.
oh, I was just gonna say, I think hopefully maybe and maybe some of this could be addressed with the descriptions that we write out, maybe some examples, that type of thing. I think I'm more okay with that if alertness is not necessarily um, always the only thing that anybody would roll for initiative.
Right.
If we don't write it out in the rules as roll, mysticism plus alertness is just the initiative rule, but we leave it open to that free form pairing. Hey, we're about to roll initiative. What what do you guys argue is like relevant to your character's preparedness or whatever. And maybe for a more physical, very like dueling focused character, if this is a literal like physical fight that's about to bust out, yeah, for them maybe it's vigor plus duel or intellect plus duel. Like they're like, what? I could see the telltale signs. They were shifting their the placement of their feet. I could see his hand twitching toward the handle of his rapier or whatever. Just so that some different things like that could work for initiative.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Would you be okay changing it to prescience, or is that too much of a
Yeah.
mouthful?
No, no.
Like
No,
I
I
have a
think
hard
I
time
think that's
saying
still
it, but that
fine.
might be just me.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very evocative word for that kind of thing, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. But I think there's going to be enough skills that I want to put, or sorry, abilities that I want to have linked to it that will be cool. And it also gives me like one of the iconic characters that you could play in the game that I really wanted to work from the beginning, that I kind of went away with, but I can bring it back with this is the gunslinger, right? Like it's the reason they're so good is that yes, they're a good shot, but they can literally see the future down to the second of when to draw down to get the first
Right.
shot. Like it's just, I think it's a cool idea that we can put together. Now that character on
Yeah.
its own is going to be pretty useless, but it's a cool image.
But they're going to have that really high prescience skill, and they're going to be rolling that for every initiative. They're going to be
Right.
going first every single conflict. It'll be great.
All right. All right. Cool. And then the last thing, I feel good about that for mysticism. I'll go back and rework the characters and their skills and how they kind of look. Don't have to make too much of a changes, I don't think.
Yeah.
Was changing presence. I really like presence, the attribute itself. I just
Hmm.
want to change it to panache, so I think that works better with our setting.
I mean, I said it very briefly on Discord because I don't think there's a lot to say. I love it.
All
Sounds
right.
great.
All right. I'll make sure to put that change in then.
Yeah.
So, do you feel
Ooh,
that,
shoot.
oh,
Just
what?
occurred to me though. Would intellect then also be good as something like savvy?
Well, okay. Well, let's take a look. What's in intellect right now? What do we have? We've got sciences as your default, investigate, rigging slash technology, what that is, and then lore, which I'm kind of leading on to be like history
Yeah.
and like area knowledge sort of things.
Sociology and history. Makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Um, Savvy sounds more pirate only because friggin' Jack
Mhm.
Sparrow says it. That's
Yeah, that's true. That's
that's
true.
it. But
Maybe
I'm
that
not.
goes just a little too far that direction.
We're not. I don't hate it.
We
Let
can
me
we
try
can
something.
mull it over for a little bit. We don't necessarily have to make the decision right this second.
Fine. And I guess in the interest of trying to keep the episodes a little bit shorter, you're probably right. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll write it down.
Okay.
I Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. We'll take a look, see how it compares to everything else.
Sounds good.
All right. So then how does this feel to you? Because I don't want the reason that I want to keep bringing it back to you is 'cause I want to make sure is that something that you wanted to make sure to get into the game was some sort of force thing. Or I guess you didn't say like I had to
Mm-hmm.
get in, but you were feeling that way. I was like, yeah, okay, let's see
Yeah.
what we can do to get that in to make it feel like the game that we want it to play. But also, I don't want it to be generic mind bullets. I don't want it to be the the Jedi problem. If we were going to name the episodes, I would call this the Jedi problem, you know?
Ooh, it's a good name.
Like is this feeling something a little bit more that
Um,
for the kind of what you're envisioning for the setting?
Yeah. No, I think this is in a good direction here, and especially if I understood correctly, I don't think it was explicitly said, but I think I gathered that you were pretty okay with my request to kind of limit the scope of what skills do and shift some of that extra stuff into abilities, just not into doing a whole magic system.
Right, yeah, no magic system. It was just
Um,
other way, right? You made the skills more broad. Um, I like I love the idea of miracles and that everyone can
right.
attempt to do miracles, right? I love that. Not for this game. It'll be an ability that I'll put in there. I'll have to scale it back because otherwise everyone would take it and it's way too powerful.
Okay,
Um,
that's fair. Because that's part of what I was going to say was if they are general abilities that anybody could take and not profession tied, then that opens it up to be more um, commonplace. I guess maybe it was
yeah,
sort of the idea it sounded like you were going for. But I agree that's a really good point. That if it's too good, then everybody takes it, and now you've got the everyone is a Jedi problem, and or you're also like wasting a character like creation choice because it's not really a choice anymore.
right. Yeah, and that's going to be really important to try and balance with the mysticism stuff, not to make it that much more powerful because we've already written out 36 different abilities tied to classes, and we need to make them like somewhat even. And
Yeah,
the ideas that I've come up with mysticism abilities, they're way cooler for the most part, right? They feel cooler
right,
anyway.
right.
So it's either go back to the drawing board and make all the other ones way cooler, or rein these in a little bit.
It may be a little bit of both in the end.
Yeah,
Guessing here based on knowing your general mode of creation and stuff, that making the others like bigger, splashier, more interesting, probably has something going for it.
okay. Yeah, we can look into that for sure. All right, bigger. Yeah, and that's the thing about my process. That I wrote in there the other day about how behind the scenes of what you see on the Google Docs, there's a Google Sheet that has about 25 different tabs on it right now. That is just a scatter shot of all sorts of different
Yeah.
numbers and crunches and all that
Well,
stuff.
and that's why, if listeners could see the comments in the main Google Doc and how many times I'm like, wait a minute, is this somewhere else? I feel like this is the
Right.
only place this is mentioned or whatever. And you're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
hold
it's
on.
it's somewhere in that spreadsheet.
It's getting transferred over to the main doc because I wanted to make sure it worked over here first in my head and then getting it over here to explain it better to you. So when things pop up when I'm still working on writing it, yeah, there's not going to be the other half, or the name is going to be off or something like that. But I'm excited to go through the document and get everything kind of narrowed back down. Um, so yeah, right
Yeah.
on. You feel good about
Yeah,
mysticism?
and
Oh,
I
oh,
I feel good. Oh, what's
oh,
up?
oh. Uh, mysticism or faith or attunement? Did you see any of those comments that we kind of threw out there?
I did forget that you had kind of mentioned attunement. I meant to kind of look. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. That does feel a little more um, neutral, like several of the other things. And this will be something that will come back around on the next podcast. Kind of that uncertainty between tech and magic, basically,
Yeah,
or tech and spiritual. Um, Calling it mysticism does lean more in the spiritual direction, I think. Attunement feels a little more neutral, but also feels a little. I was having trouble thinking of how to describe this. A little more. clinical, sterile, less
Sure.
less flavorful than vigor and panache and whatever.
Yeah.
Like my brain kind of hiccups a little bit when I hit attunement in that
Yeah.
list. So I meant to stop and look through through the thesaurus. Wow, that was tough. To see if there are some other options that kind of hit a similar middle ground to attunement, but don't but also line up and feel a little closer to the others.
Right on. All right, sounds good. So right now we'll stick with mysticism, which I'm totally fine with, because faith is the one that I was really pushing for, because faith can be so
Oh,
many
you were?
different. Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
because
That's the one I would figure you would veer away from, because I like when I'm writing stuff up, I keep leaning in the spiritual direction. You keep being, but robots and AI. So like,
but the thing is, we're going to blend the two, kind of, right? Depending where you come from, but that is going to be on a different episode.
that
So
is the next episode.
that's the thing we need to think about: mysticism versus faith.
Okay. Well, in that case, is this a good spot to end this one? Take a break if needed, and then come back and regale people with faith versus mysticism. Or wait, no, how'd you phrase it?
Yeah, mysticism versus faith, in like they sound the same, but they're not the same.
No.
Um, I feel pretty good. I think we've tamped down the Jedis for right now. So yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Do we have a sign off?
Uh, honestly, I don't think we had really been like, not the same way we had been making sure to do an intro.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hey, everyone.
it was
If you're
a
still
bad time to
listening,
realize that.
yeah, right. Hey, if you're still listening to this, you can stop. Thank you so much for making it this far. We appreciate it. Uh, hey, we're gonna talk
Um,
about naming stuff in faiths in the next episode, and we're really excited to unveil, which I hope will be the at least the starting word for the game.
okay. Oops, nope. Okay. Sorry, I was scrolling through the doc, but also a little bit of silence. It will be good for me to be able to find the end when I go look at the recording.
Okay.
Did you need